Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the Lanxess Arena. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone, for another episode. We've got a lot today. Not quite as much F1 with it being fully into the summer break now, but we've got some little tidbits, some quick hitters, Magic the Gathering, League of Legends, a little bit of IEM Cologne as well. But Justin, good to see you for another week, my man.
Yeah, good to be back. Happy to be here. We've actually got a little bit to talk about here, but I'm interested to hear about your week. What about your Rose, Thorn, and Seed, my friend?
Yeah, so my rose for this week was I talked about, I think it was my seed last week of going to the beach over the weekend and all. But it was just really nice to spend some good time with Colleen's family and with her and all down there at the shore. It was fun to get to do stuff at the beach with her nieces, go and build sandcastles, and they had me hauling buckets of water to fill up whatever they all sorts of stuff like that. And it was kind of cool just seeing them having fun and getting to be part of that memory kind of. I think it's cool as I continue to just become more and more a part of their family, that for her nieces and all, there'll be some of those memories from earlier on of me being around and everything. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, wow. Pretty special.
Yeah, it's just a neat thing when you think about it. Plus, they're hilarious. The 5 and 7 year old are both characters. So it was fun. After the first day of hauling just bucket after bucket of water to fill up the kiddie pool that they had me dig in the sand first, I was I woke up so sore the next day. I'm like, why am I in pain? And I was oh, I was just doing slave labor up and down the beach for a 5 and a 7 year old, just being yes, dig this hole. Okay, now fill this hole up with water. Oh, the water all drained out because it's 90 degrees outside. Go get more. But it was pretty funny, to say the least. My thorn for this week is actually something that came on today, but I don't know if I bit the side of my tongue or if it's a little ulcer or something, but the side of my tongue really hurt. It's bothering me. There's a little bump on it, and it's making it more difficult to enunciate words. I feel like I have a slight lisp. So
Gotcha.
So if I sound different, it's probably that. I feel like I'm just more conscious of it than anyone would be. But not very fun, because there's not really a good way that I've found to alleviate that at all. I'm sure
that doesn't sound great.
Yeah, and talking probably doesn't help it a lot, but it's already there, so I'm it is what it is.
The show must go on, as they say.
Yeah, blood, sweat, and tears for this podcast, man. But my seed for the week is just, I mentioned it to you last week, but I'm starting to do a little bit of research into just improving my setup with sound, audio, things like that for the podcast. I got a new webcam that I haven't set up yet, that I'm going to test out, see if the quality is better. It looks like it might be, and I got it for a pretty good deal. So I was all right, I'll see, maybe it'll improve my video quality. Not that it's bad, but want to test that out.
Sure.
And then looking at for the future of the podcast and everything, video editing, different software and stuff that we might be able to improve the overall quality of the video and everything. So just excited about all the little pieces of the puzzle to those small improvements add up to just improve the quality of the podcast. And so I'm excited to get those going and test them out a little bit.
Yeah, that is really exciting. I mean, yeah, if you just think about where we started compared to like what the show is now, it's yeah, it's pretty night and day, a big difference, and it is, due to a bunch of these just, little tiny changes. So that's yeah, that is quite exciting.
Yeah. But that is my rose, thorn, and seed for this week. But let me hear about your week. What's been going on?
Very cool. I will. I'll start where you left off. So we have, well, games are going on right now. We're in the group stage currently, but we've got the Valorant Champions tournament for the end of the year. So it wraps up the VCT, which is the Valorant Champions Tour. So like all of the regions, very similar to like the LPL, the LCK, all of these, they all have their regions. They qualify into what then is, there's like a bunch of majors throughout the year, which is the like Masters, like Reykjavik, Berlin. What was the most recent one? Tokyo. So we're at the final stage here. We're in the group stage. So that's kind of my seed here. I'm excited for the tournament, excited to cover the tournament here as it goes on. But yeah, it's always fun to, it's not a game that I'm able to catch like the main season games, but every time there's a major, I love tuning in and watching the matches. So that's my seed. I'm looking forward to the culmination of this tournament and the culmination of the the Valorant competitive year, as with like a bunch of other like competitive years for 2023 wind down. So that's my seed here for the week. Nice. And then my thorn, I've just got big time gamer shoulders, man. I'm just like kind of tight on the shoulders. I'm noticing some just like kind of uncomfortable, and it's from all of the head clicking that we do in our spare time. But also, we use our upper body primarily for for massage. But yeah. So just feeling a little tight, a little sore. So Sarah did some good muscle work to my underarm, so that's been feeling better. So yeah, minor thorn here for the week, but just figured I should mention it.
Yeah, no, it's good to have just a small thorn. That means it's been a pretty solid week. So
yeah, nothing too much to complain about. And then my rose, I talked about one before, and boy, I feel like I'm an employee. I'm an on-call guy. They know I can be relied on. So there's a research design team that does like basically just like market research for companies.
Yeah.
So I got into another one of those studies. It was a 2-day gig. It was a little like taste test basically. Got in, got paid, get out. It's like, overall it was like 30 minutes of my time for a good amount of money. So it's like, oh, this feels pretty good. And it's nice to get the recall, right? Having done it before and now feeling like, all right, cool, now I'm like really involved. I guess I did a fine job there. So we're moving forward. So we did that today, and that was very cool. But that was my rose, thorn, and seed here for the week.
Nice. That's awesome. It's cool that it's like food testing and all too, for it sounds like a decent number of these. So so yeah, definitely not a bad way to make a little bit of money and yeah, kill a little time.
Yeah, not bad at all. It's very sweet. But we got a packed show. Let's get into it. I know you've got a little collection of quick hitters here that we can pick through.
Yep. So the first one that I thought would be interesting to you. So there was an announcement from Counter-Strike looking at the future of Counter-Strike 2 and all moving into kind of that new era of Counter-Strike. But one of the changes that they're looking to make is that tournament organizers and will not be able to have any sort of business arrangements or relationships with teams that are participating in the events to kind of avoid like people just getting invited to tournaments because they're like a partner of like a company or whatever else. So the goal is to kind of create this more open kind of circuit where teams can just like be able to qualify for tournaments using a like rating system and everything from like smaller events and things like that to determine like who qualifies for those and all. So I think that's definitely a better way to do it. It'll just encourage, of course, like more competition across the board for that high level where people can just like put a team together and then go out and qualify for an event. They don't have to get a special invite or anything to potentially participate in these like large tournaments with big prize money and all.
Yeah, that is pretty exciting, and I imagine like I don't know what teams are associated with some of the like the big organizers and what this looks like in practice, but just in the idea of it, that does sound pretty nice. I would hope there isn't too much of that going on where like, oh, are some of my favorite teams just at these tournaments because of because of partnerships or whatever. You would have to figure that these would be teams that are likely getting knocked out early, possibly, though, because you would think if they're winning games on their own merit, whether they're partnered or not, they would be there.
Yeah. Well, or it could even like apply to a situation where a larger team is like lower rated than a very small team that maybe doesn't have as much of a pull of fans or something like that, where they're like, oh, we'll take FaZe even though they're kind of in a slump right now because they have a huge fan base, as opposed to picking up Squad 8 over there because they've only got 100 Twitter followers even though they're crushing out every team they play or whatever.
Right. Okay.
So I think it avoids
example.
like those kinds of things as well, not just a scenario of like maybe not specifically due to partnerships, but doing those qualifications on just a ranking system kind of alleviates multiple of those potential issues.
No, that's very interesting. I'm curious how it'll manifest in the teams that the teams that we see, and if it does create a more underdog, not the word isn't allowing, but underdog able in some way where there's
potential
opportunity for
it. No, I think it, and it'll be, I'm curious to wait and see, because it sounds like, so because there are teams and tournament organizers who have like contracted partnerships or whatever as well. They're not going to start that till 2025, so it's still a ways down the road, to allow for like those contractual obligations and all to be kind of just resolved prior to worrying about this. But I'm curious to see if it does open up the opportunities for more teams to come in, or just kind of more competitive play in that esport, which is always good to see the best of the best competing at like the highest level. I mean, that's why we talk about most of the things we talk about here on the podcast.
For sure. Well, and I mean, if you look at some of the view numbers for CS:GO as compared to like other ones that I'm watching, dude, it doesn't even come close. The eyes that these tournaments draw, like, it's crazy.
It's pretty wild. So I think it would be or will be a cool thing for the scene. I don't know, of course, how much it will affect things, but maybe it does give that opportunity for like a Cinderella story kind of thing. But to move along, we had an IndyCar race this past weekend. So we had the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix in Nashville. It was a pretty good race overall, like pretty clean, very few incidents compared to what we often kind of see in IndyCar with the bumping of shoulders and all. But Roman Grosjean, for one, I was happy to see he bounced back a little bit, had a really nice race, led a few laps of the race, ended up in P6 overall. Alex Palou does not end up winning after he's had this really impressive season so far. He comes in third. But Kyle Kirkwood, one of the younger guys who's been, I think it's his second year in IndyCar, got the win. He has won, I think, a couple of races this year now. And so he's having a nice season for a young driver, which was cool to see him get the win this week.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Music City Grand Prix circuit. Is it the same as 2021? So it had that little like very Sochi similar cube with the two long straight sections.
Yep.
Whoa, okay. This circuit looks very cool. There's something about the IndyCar circuits where the design is much different than like Formula One circuits and like other like purpose-built tracks like that. And I guess Music City, this is a street track that they built in.
Yeah, street circuit through Nashville.
Whoa, and then it goes over the bridge. That's fucking cool, man.
Yeah, it's definitely like a pretty neat spot to do it. Colleen and I were we were just past turn 10. Or no, just before turn 10 when we were in Nashville the other summer for a wedding, and we stayed at, I'm looking at the map, the Comfort Inn and Suites with the world famous guitar shaped pool that was right next to the football stadium there. And so this circuit goes like the circuit goes kind of like around the stadium parking lot and like down to across that bridge.
Whoa, okay, so you were kind of right there where it was being held. That's very sweet. Yeah, this circuit looks super cool.
Looking at the map, I can actually like picture it a bit more, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, what a like picturesque little area. You know, you have the two super long straights going up and across the bridge. Like that's a nice bit of circuit actually. I bet that's quite fun to drive.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, and there were it was just a lot of good racing at the circuit this past weekend. I felt like there were a lot. I mean, IndyCar always has a lot of overtakes and everything. The difference in tire strategies or different tire compounds is so drastic. But yeah, very very fun race to watch. Will Power right at the beginning. I think he was able to get back up to his starting position, but he like almost didn't get going at the start because he couldn't find his like headphones, like his like in-ear things for the car. And so he's like running around. All the other cars had left the pit lane to start circling with the like safety car and all for the rolling start. And so he's like scrambling, hopping into the car. They're getting him buckled in, and he just makes it out in front of the safety car. So I think they ended up having to do an additional lap of that so that the like pack was like packed up or whatever. They always make sure there's like a minimal amount of distance between the rows before like starting the races. So,
right, they bunch them all up.
Yeah, so he fortunately didn't end up a lap down because of that at the start, but it was a weird thing. I haven't I know like F1 we've had instances like that where like I think Kimmy maybe at one point is like screaming at someone to get him his wheel, or people are like, "Where's my gloves? Where's my?" And but it's it was definitely interesting to see because that it just doesn't happen that often. So it was kind of a odd moment.
Well, and you have this sense that like everything's going according to plan, nobody's lagging behind, we're all moving together here, the show is moving forward, and you have this sense that everybody would be moving together, and it's like, oh no, they would have just like left without him if he wasn't
Oh yeah,
ready.
yeah,
Yeah, which is like hilarious.
and just the fact of like everyone, you expect everyone on these teams to be like so professional. Like
Right.
I expect there to be a guy that's like the just the like gear guy where he's just
Yep.
standing off like while they're doing the national anthem and like any like pre-race stuff. I would just have a guy holding the helmet, the gloves, the earpieces, just like carrying them around like a water boy. Just have them right there. I'm surprised that that something like that just got like misplaced and he's like scrambling to find them and everything. It's not what you really expect, but yeah, a good race and nice performance from Grosjean, which I'm always just keeping an eye out for.
Now, did you say Pelot ended up third? He's been having a pretty good season. Did he run into issues of some kind? Was it the like push to pass management, or like wasn't he really in the running?
No, not anything in particular. He just he qualified P4 and I think just was on a slightly different tire strategy. And Scott McLaughlin and Kyle Kirkwood both had just really good pace. I think it might be just they had a better setup or that worked out a little better for them and just put in a good weekend.
So it's the primaries and the alternates, right? So
Yeah.
there's just two compounds for IndyCar.
Yeah.
So is it more of like a hybrid medium and then like a hybrid hard, or is it more like is it like more towards the soft and then like a harder medium?
I feel like it's like between a medium and a hard and
Okay.
then like uh soft. So like or maybe even sometimes like a super soft which used to be
Okay.
like so I would imagine so there's the what like seven tire C, is it five or seven? C one, two, three,
I
four.
think there's five.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like you have the like C1 and the C4 or like the C2 and the C5. Like there's a
Okay, gotcha.
significant difference in terms of the it wouldn't just be like a C1 to a C3. Like it seems
Mm-hmm.
like it's got that extra distance between the hardness of the compounds cuz the alternates that they use, which I think are the softer compound,
Gotcha.
seem to just wear down insanely fast. So you're like planning not just like your pit strategies, but your fuel, like how
Mm-hmm.
like all of those things based on the stint that you're gonna do and everything. Because if you're going on that alternate tire, why would you be high fuel when you're gonna be on the softest compound? Like give yourself as much, or
Mm-hmm.
the compound that's going to give you the shortest lifespan. Like keep the fuel down and then fill more up the next pit stop kind of thing. So it plays into all that strategy
For
pretty
sure.
well, which is cool.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting about the IndyCar is like, well, just one interesting element is also that refueling, and the way that you're talking about how linked the tire strategy with the fueling is, and kind of it gives this sense that on the fly decisions maybe not the best, where like having a planned kind of route is going to set you up for success, because you might end up just fumbling that audible if you don't get the fuel to tire compound to stint exactly right, and then you just end up kind of washing out in a way where either you don't have enough fuel, you have to pit at a bad time, your tires don't have enough life left, but like your tank is full or something like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's actually that's quite interesting, and a difference that we don't see in Formula One, because we don't have, I shouldn't say we, Formula One doesn't have the refueling.
Yeah, and I think like even just on another note with the refueling, like it adds in another wrinkle where there are times where if there so typically if there's a track wide caution, basically a safety car in IndyCar, the pit lane closes. So I've seen races where drivers have to go into the pits even though it's closed and take the penalty, because otherwise they would have run out of fuel just doing these safety car laps and everything, because they're like right towards the end of their stint, and the incident happened right before they were going to pit, but the pit lane's closed, so they try to hang out to see as long as they can to see if they can wait till the pit lane opens, but if not, they just have to eat the penalty and go in. So it's wild. Yeah, it's an interesting like component of that too with the refueling. So it adds a lot of like strategy calls in. It's kind of like a team leaving their driver out on really, really old tires in hopes that that they get that safety car right at the end and get the cheap pit stop. It's like you gotta kind of hope that the fueling and everything's right, because if something does happen, then you could be in trouble. So kind of the reverse of that. But
and are there the same, like, do you have to switch compounds?
You have to use both.
Okay, at some point in the race.
Yep.
Okay, so that's fun.
But yeah, so it was a cool race to watch. I would definitely recommend checking it out, or at least the highlights. But looking at the next little note, so I talked about Max looking to start his own GT3 team, and so he, I guess, spoke a little more on it, that he is planning to have a 2-car team initially, to which he thinks is like a feasible like amount of cars and everything to go into endurance racing and all with them in 2025. So I think it's smart of him to just like kind of not go too big too fast, just kind of like find his way into this realm as a team owner and all, and then kind of see where it goes from there. But also it allows him to get this rolling pretty quickly and to move nicely along with the plans for the GT3 team.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And then kind of just thinking down the line, kind of further cementing his name in racing, very similar to like a Chip Ganassi or a team like this, Andretti. Yeah, just teams defined by the last name of a great individual that was, doing it at one time. That's like very exciting, and I imagine his passion for these other racing formats will definitely carry through. I mean, we're not bringing you the news when we tell you that he's involved in all sorts of racing outside of his Formula One career. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. I may if there's a Verstappen racing to watch in these GT3 formats, that could be a reason to get into it.
Yeah, and I mean
at least like a bridge point,
Oh yeah, you have that. It's at like, well, kind of first degree of separation. But it's also like neat because he's talked about how it could be a road, and not that he'll necessarily, I think, exclusively pick drivers this way, but it's a road that he's looking to give opportunities potentially to endurance sim racers to potentially move from that sim racing into like real racing. And also I think with him and his enjoyment of the sim endurance races and everything, it makes sense. But I think he also probably from that experience sees that there's a lot of talent in that world that just doesn't have the connections or whatever to get into an actual racing seat. So they're just doing sim racing. So definitely a cool thing that I'm looking forward to seeing once that's fully up and running. But yeah, still a couple years away, 2025 for that. So
But I mean, it's cooking, and I mean that'll be here. That'll be here before we even know it, brother.
oh yeah, so I'm excited to see and to hear more news as things progress with that and all moving forward. Because I guess that would be racing by 2025. So I would imagine that there will be a lot of the groundwork before then that we'll hear about, and potentially like driver signings and things like that. So
Yep. Yeah, a lot of news to yet be had, I guess you would say.
yeah. But to move over into the Formula One section of the episode, just a lot of little kind of quick notes as well with this, but not as much to talk about during the summer break. But Pirelli has proposed from the tire standpoint the potential to create a like super intermediate or something between the intermediate and the wet tire, which I guess is like so. The reason that I'm like I don't really understand it is like it doesn't seem like we're ever going to go actually like go racing where drivers are using the wet tires. They may be required to start on them, but then immediately switch to the intermediates because we've seen that already. It doesn't seem like any team ever wants to actually run the wets. They're just too slow. So I don't get why they would make a super intermediate instead of just saying, hey, currently in F1, if the rain is bad enough where we would use our wet tires, they're gonna red flag it because the rain's too heavy anyway and the spray's too much and all these things that have been talked about. Why not just be like, oh, let's make the wet tire a bit closer to the intermediate in pace and all, so then there's not a huge difference between them in pace, and we can just say, hey, if it rains this much, like, it's gonna be red flagged. So they just use those for actually racing, because otherwise there's no point of the wet tires other than maybe a qualifying. That's the only time where people are kind of spaced out enough where they can maybe like use them and not be as concerned about like incidents or the spray being an issue or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that does sound about right to me, especially in recent history. If you think of a lot of the races that we've had in the wet, yeah, there are significant delays, big red flags, and all sorts of shenanigans like that. So yeah, it seems like a halfway step. I imagine they'll probably land somewhere in the realm of what you're talking about, like maybe a different wet tire to actually make it an option, especially when the safety is leaning towards if the conditions are even bad enough for a wet tire, we're not even trying to go racing at this point.
Right.
So, yeah, that does kind of feel about right. Maybe they're trying to creep up to better wet running is likely the, kind of what they're going for, or maybe having drivers and teams feeling more comfortable with more significant wet running, I guess would be how you say that. Because, yeah, it all just gets delayed and red flagged anyway, so what's the point? I'm kind of with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I thought also part of all of this like work that they're doing on sustainability and all was supposed to be like reducing the amount of tires that you're bringing to races and things like that. And you're adding in just an extra compound of tires that every team's going to have to bring to every single race. And that's just an additional, that's kind of going in the opposite direction of where you'd want to. So either you have to like slow down the intermediates to make them closer to the wets, or maybe you bring the wets and make them a little bit quicker somehow with the way they work. But like I know there's safety regulations and all, but it just seems like if safety is becoming a concern, they just red flag it and don't start the race already anyway, until it's like conditions where everyone's debating, oh, can we go with intermediates or can we go for slicks? Like no one's ever like, should we put the wet on? Like, no. So yeah, I don't know if there's like a perfect solution, but I don't know if adding a just like in between tire that's going to leave the wet tires even more unused is like the answer. But I don't know. Who am I?
I think they would likely just try and phase one of them out then.
Probably.
Right. So yeah, for like 6 months you have the 3 compounds, and then they're like, okay, we can get rid of this one then.
Yeah, I mean,
or something.
That could be the solution, but either way, it's going to be a process to kind of figure out, because you could implement them and then get no wet weather races too, and not really get to like see it. Like it just could be a weird end of the season. Like we've had a ton of rain in the first half of the season this year compared to recent seasons that I can think of off the top of my head. We've had a lot more rainy races, so it could just flip the opposite way. You never know. But
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but yeah, something to keep an eye out for if they actually do kind of move forward or figure out what they want to do there. I'd mentioned it last week, but there's still more conversation about Hugo Boss potentially coming in as the main sponsor for the AlphaTauri team next season. And I was not far off. I sent it to you, but Hugo Boss Bulls Racing, the potential team name. Not great.
It's a mouthful.
It's a lot. I don't even think you can like abbreviate it and call it like HBBR. That's still like a lot. So I don't know.
Well, because neither of the organizations are going to give up like name recognition in that scenario. They're not going to like come up with some new like fusion name. They're just like, okay, we just have to mash them together. Does this look okay? And no, it doesn't.
No, but they'll probably go with it anyway. So that's the update there. Talking about AlphaTauri, though, there was a report that came out. Someone said earlier this week that basically AlphaTauri, when with their new team and sponsor and all next year, are planning to run the RB19 car, so Red Bull's current car, next year, and just like run with that. And like they can't do that. Like they like actually cannot do that. That was the whole kerfuffle with the pink Mercedes with Racing Point a couple years ago, where they basically had Mercedes' previous year car because there was this illegal transfer of information and whatnot between the two teams, and then they got penalized for it. Like that's why there's a specific list of like parts that you're able to purchase from other teams. So unless they're referring to the already like spoken about increase of partnership between AlphaTauri and Red Bull, where they're going to use their front suspension and like buy more of the parts that they're allowed to. I was just like, who in the F1 world is out here putting this like just ridiculous buzzword tabloid headline out there, because it like you just can't do there's rules against it. Like, if you're in the F1 world enough to be like, oh, this could happen, you should immediately be able to be like, oh wait, no, they can't. Like, just a weird thing. And there was like, I saw this a bunch of different places. I'm like, they just actually can't do that.
Would there be a world where, with some small tweaks within loopholes, they could like run the same car effectively, but because it's like enough different?
I mean, if they figure out, without Red Bull say, like, if they buy all the parts that they can from Red Bull, and then they go, okay, let's look at their car and see if we can figure out how it works. And they do all the engineering and testing and all, and figure out how to create those parts again, just from like the way they look or whatever else. That's not illegal. But if there's like information being passed between the teams, it's like, oh yeah, these are the dimensions of this part, this is how big the open, like, this is how the airflow, like, that they can't do. So if they, like, that's why the teams are always like looking at each other's cars, why Lewis and Seb always have their little inspections after they get smoked in a race, where they're like, so what is going on, and try and take that information back to the team, because they have a lot of knowledge. Like, you have to be able to figure it all out, from either engineering it on your own, or being like, oh, hey, that looks interesting, let me try and recreate that thing I saw and see if we can like figure out how it works. That's why looking at the underside of the floors earlier in the season was such a big thing, because the floors give most of the downforce for the cars currently and all. And so seeing like Red Bull or Mercedes or Ferrari's floors, they're like, oh, like, so that's how they're doing it. So yeah, like, there are things that you can figure out, and they could try and recreate the Red Bull. But at that point, like, you're also just falling behind, sort of, by just being like a year out of date.
Yeah.
When other teams who are currently competing with Red Bull and much closer than AlphaTauri are building on their own concepts and trying to improve. I think you're still leaving yourself behind, but you maybe jump up to 9th or 8th from 10th in the constructors.
Right. Okay. Because when I had seen that little blurb, I thought it was, I had misunderstood. I thought it was Red Bull looking to use the same car, and I was like, oh, well, that's like ridiculous, but that doesn't seem like far off. Like, I guess they could if they wanted to, but
Gotcha.
it was the sale of the RB19 down to the sister team AlphaTauri, which just would be straight up illegal, which
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
that totally makes sense, because yeah, I'd seen that little blur, but yeah, misunderstood it. But I appreciate the kind of, rules deep dive that we just went on, because yeah, it can all be kind of confusing sometimes.
yeah, and especially with like the cars and all, since that's the part of F1 that is just seen so much less from the public eye. Like, you get to see all the races and the driver conversations, contracts, whatever else, but the development of the cars is a little more tight-lipped around the grid and all. So,
Big time.
so yeah, it was just I was like surprised to even see it as a headline, because I was like, that they can't do that. But then it kind of took me down to thinking about what they could do a little bit. But looking at, instead of the upcoming year, looking at the rest of the second half of the season here, Aston Martin, there's conversation that they still have a large number of updates that they're planning to bring to the car in the second half of the year. So they're still doing a lot of development. It seemed like, from what I was reading, some of their updates that they did earlier in the season part of the reason that they have kind of slumped is that their tire degradation has gotten a lot worse. So some of the updates that they made, I guess, created an unintended effect of even though creating more downforce, creating a lot more tire degradation, and so kind of counteracting their own improvements that they're looking to make on the car. So they seem to have, from what they say, kind of figured out where the issues are and are planning to bring updates and upgrades to continue developing the car and kind of try and come back at it in the standings to fight for that second position.
Oh, that's pretty exciting, and sounds quite promising that they're kind of able to lay out what the issue was. Say they've made headway there. That's great.
Yeah, and I mean it's what we are always hoping for. Like, we want competitive races, we want the excitement of it, and so it was super exciting watching Fernando Alonso and like the Aston Martin team put a car up on the podium for like 5 of the first like 7 races or whatever it was.
Yeah, for sure.
And all very unexpected. So exciting to see them kind of pushing forward with that and figuring out some of those issues. Because just having another team to battle with the Ferraris, the Mercedes, the McLarens, it's fun to see. Haas as well, though, is going to be coming into the second half of the season, is planning to kind of do the same thing and bring some updates to try and counteract their tire degradation. That's a big issue that they've had as well, which is part of why they have had such good like one lap pace, but then their race pace is just so rough. It's just they can't keep that pace with the wear on the tires. So looking to move forward and hopefully address those problems in the second half of the season as well. So hopefully we'll see them kind of have a little bit, like, be able to capitalize more on the solid qualifying performances that they've had out of the guys like Nico Hulkenberg primarily, and then Magnussen here. They're kind of making it up into Q3 and all. So more opportunities to actually secure those points instead of being like, oh, I qualified P4 and finished P12.
Sure.
Just kind of falling backward down the grid.
Yeah, because you don't want to see that, especially, there is so much promise there on a Saturday, but if you know you're just gonna be moving backwards, that's got to be pretty demoralizing.
Yeah, and not just demoralizing, but just to like frustrating too, just to be like, we have like a driver who is putting in really good quality laps and everything. Magnussen not doing bad, but Hulkenberg's stood out so much in those qualifying performances.
Big time.
So to be like, we have him there in these positions, it's like sand slipping through your fingers. You're just like trying to hold on to it, and just as you do, more and more it just goes through. And so hopefully they'll be able to make those improvements and kind of hit the second half of the season head on, which is exciting. I'm just always rooting for every team to improve and get into the fight. I want to see 10 teams fighting for the championship.
You want to see 9 opponents valiantly get dashed down by Max, not have a pub stomping. That's what you want.
Yeah. I want
a fair challenge on the hill, but for Max to remain king.
So, somewhat. Like, I don't want it... I don't want it to be just... I want to actually see Max race. Like, it's great that he's winning, but, like, after lap 5, you don't see him except for his pit stop for about 5 seconds, and then he's gone for the rest of the race again. I would like to see some more excitement there, but it's kind of like with my opinions with my football teams. I would 100% rather see them blow the other teams out of the water than have a nail biter. I'd rather just have the guaranteed win for things like that. But with F1, I think it's a little bit different just because at least in say football, I'm rooting for the Eagles. The Eagles are just running up and down the field on the Cowboys, the Giants, the Commanders, whatever other team, and they're just running up the score. I'm getting to see the Eagles offense do really well. I'm watching them. I'm seeing their defense probably do really well too. If Max is out there 45 seconds ahead of the field, you know how much of Max doing well I get to see? Fucking nothing. So I don't get to see him do anything because the excitement is back with the guys who are battling. So yes, I do want Max to maybe still win a lot, but just at least to have someone kind of trying to chase after him.
Sure, you want him to win on screen, not off screen.
Yeah, it's more fun that way. So
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I'd still be fine with him winning the championship by 250 points as long as the races are actually exciting.
Yeah, whatever.
That's all I'm looking for.
Whatever works.
Looking for fun racing, but to kind of look at a mix of fun racing. So McLaren, they've done it before, but they're looking to have Alex Palou and Pato O'Ward drive in some of the free practice sessions for McLaren later in the season. So another opportunity for those IndyCar guys to be out on the F1 grid, drive the cars and all, which is pretty cool to see.
Get shut down. You don't have enough points. Get the fuck out of here.
Well, that was Mr. Colton Herta. Alex Palou should have the points. I think Pato O'Ward would for a super license, but
gotcha. That's good.
But to speak of Alex Palou, obviously great season right now in IndyCar. It's put him on the radar primarily of AlphaTauri and Williams potentially for a driver's seat. So, or at least, I guess I guess it would be a driver's seat as opposed to a reserve opportunity since he is currently reserve driver for McLaren. So it would have to be for an official race seat. But I guess that kind of puts up into the air some of the questions with seats and everything with the teams. So looking at contracts that are going to be expiring at the end of the season that have not been re-signed, Lewis Hamilton is one, Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri. So two potential options for a race seat for Alex Palou there. Of course, just kind of pending how the drivers do the rest of the season with Danny Ricks and Yuki. Zhou Guan Yu, Nico Hulkenberg, Kevin Magnussen, and Logan Sargent. So the other team interested, Williams, has that seat that they haven't locked in a contract renewal with Logan Sargent yet. But with that said, Yuki Tsunoda and Zhou Guan Yu both have been reported to most likely be re-signing with their teams for the upcoming season. So it kind of leaves, I'd say, Danny Ricks and Logan Sargent and maybe Lewis Hamilton as the potential seats open for Alex Palou, so but yeah, some contract things, and I think a lot of the teams now at this point will probably wait till we're towards the end of the season to officially sign contracts and all. I think AlphaTauri has a lot up in the air to figure out, along with Williams. I think Haas has kind of said that they're planning to keep both Magnussen and Hulkenberg for another year, but nothing official yet. So yeah, there's some potential for opportunities still with some of those seats. It sounds like, though, that a couple of the F2 drivers that we've seen probably they've kind of redirected their targets. So Teo Porcher, who is, I think he's top 3 right now. If not, he might be first in the F2 standings at the moment. Most likely is looking to either continue towards another racing series and possibly go to like Super Formula or something like that, because it seems like the doors in F1 may not be opening for him. So trying to look at, instead of saying in F2 for another year, looking at another racing series at a high level to kind of look at opportunities. And then Liam Lawson, similarly, after Daniel Ricciardo came into the AlphaTauri seat, his name had come up a lot, but he said that he's still focused on driving in Super Formula this year and looking to hopefully find an opportunity for an F1 seat next year if it's there, but if not, to just continue pushing forward with Super Formula.
So it seems like F2 is like in some way a junior format where like you kind of want to get out of it before it's too late.
Sort of, like for Teo Porcher, this is his 3rd year in F2. He's still only 19 years old, but right. I think to some extent, the longer you're in F2 and not being signed by a higher level team in some sort of racing series, the question kind of is like, well, what's wrong with him? Like, why is he not getting picked up? And it could be just like legitimately a timing thing. Like there are not a lot of F1 seats that are just open. Like there's just not. And so the opportunities each year in F1 are going to be slim. There's going to be, at any professional level, there's 30 guys competing for one open spot. And so there's always going to be these guys that get left out and have to kind of, if they want to continue racing, look to find the new path of their career and all. But we've seen like Alex Albon leave F1, go, and I forget if he raced Super Formula or Formula E. I think it was Super Formula, and then bounce back to F1 with Williams. So like those other series, I think do also have opportunities to get into F1 potentially, but it's all about that timing and just kind of everything, kind of the stars aligning a little bit for those things. So
of course, right. So the idea is like, don't stick around in F2 hoping for F1 forever. Do your best in F2 that you can, but when you are looking at F1, if the doors don't open, go look for something else, because you can't stay. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Yeah, exactly. And Teo Porcher, so he's winning the F2 season this year currently. So he's, performing really, really well. Even though it's his 3rd year in F1, like I said, he's only 19 years old. We saw 28-year-old Nick DeVries get his rookie opportunity this year in F1. So he's got a lot of time before he gets to that level. But yeah, I think after 3 years in F2, and especially if he does end up winning the F2 championship, it's kind of like you've beat the competition there already. Like you've proven that you're above that level of racing.
Right.
So why stay in it and just like do the same thing again? Like you're not proving anything new.
Of course.
And so that's probably part of the way they look at it as well, from those driver standpoints.
Especially when there are series above it. But for something like Formula One, like you want to keep the seat as long as you can.
Oh yeah, that's the pinnacle.
That's it.
Yep, it's
Right.
the top of the mountain. But to look at a couple other contract things, so with looking over to Ferrari, there are rumors that Charles Leclerc has spoken to a number of other teams, but then ultimately decided to stay with Ferrari and do a 2-year extension with, I think, an option for 3 additional years. So nothing officially announced there yet, which I think also from Ferrari's side, they don't plan to, because it sounds like they have told Carlos Sainz that they're not making any decisions on signing contracts and all until the end of the year. So if anything with Charles happened yet, that's being kept under wraps. But from Carlos's side, there was a report that came out that he had signed a pre-contract with Audi. I think I had mentioned that last week, but he and his team came out and basically and vehemently denied. They're like, option A, B, C are Ferrari, Ferrari, Ferrari. Like, we are not trying to look for opportunities elsewhere. Like, this is where I want to be, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And all. And so he was, they were, from what I read, he was told that they're not going to decide on the driver lineup until the end of the season and all, and that's when they'll start negotiating contracts. I mean, both drivers are on for another year as is. So looking from 2024 or from, I guess, 2025 season on.
Okay.
So kind of a interesting thing. Like, it's when the bad or the rumors can kind of come up to bite you, because I don't know if he was talking to Audi or not, or if maybe someone from Audi was like, "Hey, would you be interested?" And he's like, "Hey, if like I need a place to drive and that's open, sure." And then all of a sudden, someone's like, "Everyone, Carlos Sainz agreed to work." Like, yeah,
Right.
So
who knows how it happened?
so I it seemed like that, like, denial was not necessarily like, hush hush, shut up everyone, no, I'm definitely not doing that, or as much of a like, no, I'm not doing that, like, don't screw up my current contract negotiations where I'm trying to like say, because they'll think I'm 1 foot out the door and then I'm not gonna, like, they're not gonna want to work with me or whatever else. So yeah, an interesting like, I guess part of the contract negotiations and all, the rumor mill can run amok a little bit.
Well, and that's where the trust must have to come in just big time when you're having these conversations between driver and team principal, or driver and whoever, where it's like, you have to be able to keep out of your mind, or force out of your mind, all of the hearsay that would be around and this and that and, oh, I heard and whatever, because it does seem like this very, like, I don't want to say gossip, but like, word gets around mighty quick, right?
It's a small grid.
Yeah. There's not, while there's a lot of people in the organizations, like, there's only so many here, kind of thing.
Right.
So yeah, I guess that's where the trust comes in, and where there actually are a bit of negotiations where you're trying to understand each other, and, like, what have you heard about me, kind of thing, when you're coming to the table,
Right.
and trying to, like, lay all that to rest.
Yeah, it's just an extra hassle, I think. And like all it takes is one person not hearing the whole story or whatever else to spread the wrong information around, and the next thing you know, you're trying to put out fires all over the forest. So but kind of the final little contract thing that I thought was interesting. So this is current contracts, but there apparently is a clause in Checo's contract that if he's losing to Max by 125 points, they can reduce his, like, salary and things like that within his, like, contract, I guess, for whatever gap of time he would be below that barrier, and so he is currently exactly 125 points down on Max. Whether or not Red Bull actually is like, you know what, Checo, we're cutting your paycheck. I don't know if they would actually do that, especially looking at the kind of bounce back to form that we've seen from Checo the last race and a half or so, where he's looked a lot better, performed well and everything, but he's now got that gap to Max, and the way things are going, it will just slowly, more slowly than before, just kind of expand. I don't know if Red Bull would necessarily be like, all right, Checo, hand it over.
Yeah, that sounds not fun for both parties.
Yeah.
To actually have to come collect on that clause.
Yeah, I think that's a weird one, and especially looking at how his form has come back. At least your most recent race is the only thing I can think about in terms of how well you're driving. Like, that recency bias, I think you would have to say, why would we do this to the guy that's just gonna knock him down even more? We want it, he's signed till the end of 2024. Why would we want to just kick him while he's down a little bit?
Yeah, it's like fighting the hand that feeds you.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, let's make our team do worse by getting in our driver's head. That sounds like a great idea. But to kind of wrap up the F1 segments, I had to end it with a Max stat. I need to get a little intro song for that. But beep, beep, beep. But I saw that the longest active point streak, so top 3 active point streaks in F1 currently, are Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton in second and third with 12 races in a row in the points. And then first is Max with 31 races in a row in the points. And so that's all. That's your Max stat for the day.
Damn. So that's more than a full season in the points.
Yep.
Hell yeah. That's pretty good.
So has not finished outside of the points. I think that does not include DNFs. I think it's races they finish, finishing in the points. But yeah, Max stats, man.
They are quite impressive.
They just catch my eye when they look that absurd. So that
the large number problem.
Yeah, it's and just even from Max to Lewis, and Fernando, second and third place, he's more than double theirs. That's crazy. That's it's a lot of races in a row.
Yeah, especially if somebody is ooh, look how dominant Mercedes was. You could pull up stats that are yeah, not really.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big gap. But looking over at the League of Legends matchups we had over in the LPL, we were looking at JDG versus LNG for the LPL finals. And so we actually ended up, so LNG beat Billy Gaming, who had their rematch against JDG. They beat Billy Gaming 3-1, go on to the finals. And so LNG put up a really good fight in this matchup. From the get-go, they kind of went for a very brawly team fight centered comp. They were looking to really go in with the Wukong, with the Nico, Rakan, Cassante. They wanted to get in there and blow up the carries of JDG. In game 1, it didn't quite pan out for them, but I felt like their comp had a lot of good prospects for it from LNG's side, and I really like the cohesion of it. it was kind of the scenario that we see with a lot of JDG games where they just kind of outskilled them in that first game in the team fights and all. They were able to peel back like really well and re-engage the fights, just drag out the team fights and kind of avoid that initial burst that LNG was looking to do, to go on and win that first game.
Yeah, in scenarios where LNG, like especially Scout, was able to find these like really clean kind of flank angles and get the like the pop seed, whatever the ability is called, get the pop seed off. And to be fair, like LNG kind of had dragon control through a lot of the game. I'm pretty sure they had, I think they had 3, or they may even have had Dragon Soul. And it wasn't until that second Baron. Okay, so they had 3 Drakes. It wasn't until that second Baron, I believe, where the side of JDG was able to like get positional advantage on the Baron, start it, and then turn on LNG, and Ruler just stays untouched. He's just able to free fire the whole time. They get the Baron, just shove in, just like crack the gold wide open. Bro, and then in the mid lane, not even it's not even over yet. I think LNG, the next fight, they still had it, and you could still see the setup was good. Ruler just doesn't die in the fight. He's flashing over the wall. He Zonias, he just uses every tool available, but just stays alive in that final fight and is just able to clean everybody up.
Yeah, and that started out too with Kanavi also not dying. That tree was tanky. He was just getting assaulted, and they couldn't kill him, and so there was so much wasted on the tree that you end up with this just tough situation where your cooldowns are down and everything else on LNG's side, and JDG is gonna be able to kind of go in, have Ruler free hitting from the outside and turn that fight. And so that was huge from Kanavi to be able to stay alive there. Looking at game 2, JDG kind of goes for a bit of a similar comp, looking to really protect Ruler again. I mean, he's phenomenal, so let him carry kind of thing. I liked, and I'm liking more this Rel jungle pick. I know it's like being played more often, so it's not really a niche pick or anything like that anymore. But it's just always interesting to me when a champion kind of goes from being a single primary role that they're played in, like Rel with the support role, to all of a sudden being like, oh wait, we can play that in the jungle. Oh, Karma can go mid too. Oh, and Karma can go top lane, and you can play tank Karma or whatever the other kind of changes happen that shift the meta around. But yeah, I like that pick a lot, and Tarzan played it really, really well. The ultimates that he was able to get off were super impressive. On the other side, Missing really stood out early on with his Alistar engages. He was getting just every knock-up, headbutt, just going in and disrupting a lot in the team fights, but it just very quickly ends up being him just getting these great engages with no follow-up damage and just dying as we get further and further into the game. I mean, I just, from LNG's side, the team comp, I liked it a lot. Getting the LeBlanc is a really big pick. So big power pick in the mid lane. The Tristana with the resets and everything has looked really good. In all the regions that we're seeing it, very, very popular pick. So just on their side as a whole, I really like the comp. It's kind of tough on JDG's side to have really that one primary source of damage with the burst addition of the ante for Knight as well.
Sure, where once Knight's like burst is done, and he's not really offering too much. Where Ruler's the only like consistent team fight damage, and you saw in the final fight where Scout on the LeBlanc is able to find the kind of the backline angle, get the chains on the Ruler, pops him, and then like the fight's kind of over. We see the Tibbers not doing a whole lot, like you were saying, in like that mid to late game. There was that sweet spot in the like early to mid game where in the jungle chokes, we see Annie with the Tibbers being very effective, mopping up a couple of like 3-for-1s or whatever it is. But those types of fights were not enough for the JDG side of it. So yeah, we see LNG clap back in game 2 with like you said, a pretty interesting draft with the Rel jungle.
Yeah, and so going into game 3 with it all tied up, LNG kind of came out and switched up their comp again, going for a little bit more of a scaling comp with that strong early top side with the Renekton and the Maokai. But on the other side, JDG kind of, I felt like with their comp, they had to snowball early. Otherwise, they were going to just get further and further behind. It's the danger of the two marksman comps that are being played, where if they don't get ahead, it can be pretty bad. But
and to speak specifically like about the matchup, we see Gala Hong and Tarzan set up a really nice play on the bottom side early, where they kind of catch Missing and Ruler on like half of a rotation. I think they were like checking the Dragon Pit to see like if they could get vision on Tarzan, and they were just like all right there. You see, dude, and these are rare mistakes in my mind from teams like this, but you can see how much it matters where Ruler, like, he stepped back out of the bush, like, in front of his team. He separated himself for just, like, a frame or two, right? That's when he's able to land the dredge line and just, like, basically create that skirmish out of nowhere where just Ruler and Missing they were just trying to get vision. They were able to capitalize, and you see just how much this misstep leads to LNG being able to take a bunch of dragon control. They just have that whole bottom side of the map. Zeke in this game, the Renekton, he's able to even influence the bottom side of the map. So we just see a lot of play from LNG, like gaining their advantages through this bottom side of the map and sweeping that into the late game.
Yeah, and when they get later in the game and go to, like, it felt like after a certain point, LNG just really controlled the flow of the game. They're the ones making the objective plays. They're going to Baron. They're turning off Baron and chasing down JDG.
Those were the key plays.
They're in that. Well, they knew they were in the lead, and they took that position and really forced JDG into some team fights they probably didn't want to take. And so there's still that ability for a good team like LNG to have the potential to, like, win those early games and get themselves a nice lead to be able to play from ahead and to play it out cleanly. But it's oftentimes, I feel like, in these tight games that JDG finds that way to come out on top. So LNG wins game 3, and going into game 4, it's it is do or die for JDG. They go for a little bit of a different comp. They pick the Ahri. They take the Wukong and the Gragas again in the top side for 369. LNG kind of flips to the other side, the dual marksman comp with the hyper carries and everything. But JDG just seemed to kind of always have an answer for any of LNG's moves that they made in that game. Each time LNG they go and get first blood. JDG gets the return kill right away. JDG like loses Herald, they go and take Dragon, or like just it was very kind of, oh, you do this, all right, we're gonna keep up, and they kept that gold very, very tight as the game was going on, and then were able to really get some picks and all, and then of course at the Baron, LNG just gets it was like it was very ambitious Baron attempt from LNG where they just like, okay, we can't take it, but then JDG just jumps on that opportunity. They're like, oh, you're basing? We're going to take Baron now, and we're just going to start aggressively kind of closing out from here.
Yeah, I think it was a really smart, like, understanding of the win conditions of the team comp, where if you let, Sedge, Naut, Kesante, plus the double marksman, like, if you let them get to, the later stages of the game, they are going to be able to rip you apart with the amount of range that they would have available. So yeah, JDG playing to their win conditions and getting the aggression out early and kind of forcing, like you were talking about earlier in the series, kind of forcing the tempo of the match, or forcing the tempo of the game.
Yeah, and once they had that Baron, like there was no stopping. Like they just pushed down, got more kills each time someone's respawning. They're just killing them, pushing forward. So a strong way to close out that game 4. Going into some silver scrapes, some game 5 action, but LNG again goes and shifts their comp a bit more. And I feel like after seeing them kind of shift their comp each game, obviously there are components of the draft that play into that, but at the same time, I felt like they were kind of trying to outmaneuver JDG a little bit, where they're like, we're not going to be able to beat you playing the same thing head-to-head again and again and again and again. You're a good enough team that you're going to adapt and figure out what we did and figure out how to beat us. We're going to change it up each time, so you're constantly in this mode of pivoting to and reacting to us. And so they go with the Ziggs in the bot lane, the Jace in the mid lane, the Lilia in the jungle, really going for kind of this pokey long-range comp and everything. Melio made it all the way through the bans and then doesn't get picked on either side. So that was an interesting kind of part of that draft, because Melio had been banned out pretty consistently just making sure, but in all of the earlier games. But JDG kind of went for what they know a bit more, especially with the Alistar for missing. He had, like I had said, he had looked really good on that. But this was a pretty tight game as well. I mean, JDG gets ahead in the bot lane. LNG kind of reacted in the top lane, gets the kill on 369. LNG was able to get a little bit of gold lead, but it was just a pretty back and forth match for a little bit for game 5.
Yeah, I thought Game 5 was really exciting, honestly. The poke comp that LNG drafted, I thought was very exciting, putting Gala on the Ziggs, which it's fascinating to see what LNG do with the Jace comp as compared to what JDG does with the Jace comp. Like Knight, he just picks Jace. He doesn't care. He whatever the rest of the team comp is, he's just like, yeah, Jay seems fine here. But on the flip side, you see LNG, like, they pick totally for it. They get the AP in the bottom lane, so their damage isn't too like stacked in one way. It's interesting how they totally shift their draft around for it. But yeah, I thought the game was really exciting. But there was the play down in the bottom lane, man, where they're all dancing around, whatever. It was like the 7th dragon or something.
Yes.
I believe they both had a bunch. And the play just totally breaks down. They're all, you see JDG's like in the bottom side, LNG's like kind of walking through the jungle. They're just kind of window shopping. And then Ruler, the camera like flashes down. All of a sudden, Ruler's in like a 2v1. He just finds the angle, wins the fight. JDG's just like able to get their guys in, follow up. But I was like, wait, where did that even come from? It was so crazy how like after such a series, it just gets cracked open by Ruler, just like, yeah, just fight me.
Yeah.
And he just like wins the 2v1. I mean, he was fancy footwork. It wasn't like a walk in the park, but it was just crazy to see the awareness from Ruler to understand that like he could take that fight and kind of take the positional advantage there at the tip of that bottom lane. And then a lot of advantage then from that fight goes into JDG's favor. They still have some work to do yet, but that was a wild play from Ruler.
Yeah, and I think it was Zika that he killed there on the bot side. So you're taking out one of the big tanks in front line for LNG. You're kind of just eliminating their ability to play their comp out that way. There's no threat of like people diving in and doing a lot of damage. All you have is the Rel that can go in and put some CC down, but without the damage follow up or any other disruption. Like they're just gonna wait that out and turn on your carries. So Zika getting picked off there, and then JDG took the Elder Dragon, so it was the, I guess, 6th dragon or so, because it was the Elder. But yeah, JDG take the championship. They've won 3 titles in a row now in the LPL, which is pretty huge. Not something like we've talked about that's super common to see over there, because there has been so much parity with other teams coming in and kind of disrupting that. So pretty impressive from them to just continue the strong performances that they've had in the recent splits.
Yeah, big time. I thought that was a great series. And then we have the we also had the regional qualifier tournament after the the summer season playoffs. So that gives us the other 3 teams for Worlds to qualify, correct? Or just 2 more?
Just 2, because Billy Gaming qualified for Worlds by having so JDG winning the title auto qualifies them for Worlds. Billy Gaming ended up with the most outside of JDG points, championship points. So they have the 2nd seed, and so the regional qualifiers were getting the last 2 spots filled out of the top 4 teams that were left.
Okay, very cool. So that's I believe Weibo Gaming and EDG.
So Weibo, Top Esports, EDG, Weibo, and LNG were the ones that were in the regional qualifier. And then we had LNG and Weibo Gaming were the 2 teams that qualified. So there was a initial matchup between LNG and EDG, where it was, I guess, kind of the top side of that, where it was EDG got a double elimination, being like the 2nd seed maybe, I guess. And so LNG qualified, beating them 3-1. Top Esports and Weibo Gaming went to 5 games. Weibo Gaming came out on top to go to the 2nd qualification match against EDG, and Weibo Gaming came out on top there. So we'll have Weibo Gaming, LNG Esports, Billy Gaming, and JDG as our 4 representatives from the LPL.
That's pretty exciting. Dude, and Billy Gaming on the map, this Chinese esports organization, they have their League of Legends team going to the World Championships. They have their Valorant team at Champions right now, which is like kind of part of the like Valorant storyline where Chinese Valorant is kind of on the rise. We're seeing a couple of these, bigger in 2023 organizations coming in and really kind of making some waves. So that's quite exciting. We have the four teams locked in there from China.
Yep. So only region that we have all the teams locked in from as of yet. So we do have two of the teams from the LCS that are going to be there. So NRG and Cloud9 both have qualified already, but still playing for seeding there in the LCS playoffs. Cloud9 beat Evil Geniuses, I believe, just the other day to make it to that semifinals matchup against NRG. So, yeah, definitely a exciting time as we're solidifying some of these teams for Worlds. It's interesting seeing like LPL. They're gonna have this huge gap in time between now and Worlds. So it'll be a good opportunity to telescope or binoculars, not telescope, binoculars to look that far out ahead of time. But yeah, we've still got a lot to solidify, so we'll be looking at the other regions coming up. Speaking of, we had the end of the regular season over in the LCK,
and we have so this is a matchup between T1 and Live Sandbox. This is the first matchup with Faker back, getting ready for hopefully being able to, get their spot in the playoffs. So this is T1 versus Live Sandbox right at the end. Currently, like as of recording, we are in the LCK playoffs, but we want to take a look at the match where Faker comes back, and honestly, this was actually quite an interesting series. So kind of surprised that it went all three games, but I think the team comp that Live Sandbox drafted in Game 2 just really kind of took T1 off guard. The Ari Nocturne kind of assassination comp, and then it didn't even end up being about that. Like, they were going to be able to find the engages regardless, but it was Kyle on the rail, and just with the vision control, man. Like, if you watch right at the end of the game where Live Sandbox in Game 2 is like able to seal it up there. Dude, and you even see, I'm trying to think, I think Owner's playing Sejuani in Game 2. He even is, like, checking that sector of the jungle. Like, he can feel the lack of vision. He can feel, like, the depths of darkness that is up there. And, like if you just watch Owner, like, you can sense, or you can see that he senses Kyle, like he knows that play is being made. So, Live Sandbox, they end up, like, fulfilling this. It ends up being like a 45-second minute Baron setup where they get the long flank for Kyle, and then they set up onto Gumayusi with the Nocturnal and the Ariel, able to get on top of him, kill him, end the game there. So and even in Game 1, like, it was kind of a slow start for a T1. So not the best return to form. Although we see the clear-cut examples of, like, the decisiveness that T1 exudes when Faker is in the lineup. Specifically in Game 1, the play where T1's able to catch the Gwen out in the bottom lane. They have Gumayushi there with their top laner. So they 2v1 the Gwen. At the very same time, if you look across the map, Live Sandbox is like, okay, cool, this is a 4v3, so they get on to the Baron. T1 pushes into the river. They teleport Kesante back to base to teleport to Summoner Teleport to the Baron. They have Gumayusi running all the way up the river. T1's actually able to stop this Baron play. And it's like, you can tell the comms have to be like frame perfect, basically, of get the Kesante to base, get him to the Baron pit. So like you could see the puppeteering from just like the comms from T1 in general. You can't say it's all up to Faker, but you can see it's much more of a well-oiled machine when Faker is there. Say what you want about the matchups. He didn't really look that great specifically in game 2, but T1 as a whole looks much better when Faker's in the lineup. That's for sure.
They do. And looking at even Faker's performances, I didn't feel like it was anything even in game 2 that he was necessarily doing wrong. Outside of that, it was really just one moment that I was like, oh, like he messed that up, and it was in the early Baron fight, or early fight around the Baron pit. I forget if it was around Herald or if it was first Baron, but T1 throws this like massive amount of engage right at Willer to try and blow up the Nocturne early. They like go in after him, but then it takes too long to get the kill. And so all of a sudden, there are 3 members of T1 back, and your 2 tanky forms of engage, your Sejuani and your Gnar, are separated. And so you see Faker, which this is where I felt like I was kind of surprised. He rocket jumps into the Baron pit and then immediately gets closed in on by Clear, and I think it was Clear and Kale, or however you say it, on the Rel, are just in Faker's face. So then he has to flash away, and at that point, Teddy is able to Kaisa ult right after him over the Baron pit wall and just blow him up for whatever health he had left. And so now all of a sudden, you're without one of your main forms of damage on T1 side. Your 2 tanks are isolated away from the squishy members of your team, not able to really protect them at all. So it was a little bit of a overcommitment from T1, but that micro misplay from Faker, I think he could have probably rocket jumped over towards red buff instead of into the Baron pit and isolated himself a little bit more from Live Sandbox's damage. But outside of that, I felt like just the Kaisa got too big for Teddy, and he, like, when he's able to just ult at Faker, hit Q, and Faker pops like later in the game and is dead.
Oh, yeah,
I'm just like,
brutal.
I'm just like, at that point there is no counterplay. Like, you're so far behind. Like, Faker had just gotten so far, or I guess the Kaisa for Teddy had just gotten so far ahead. More so that he's just doing stupid damage. So yeah, Live Sandbox really just was able to outplay them, and that team comp definitely was a nice wrinkle in the plans, because I think it threw T1 off. They were kind of not as prepared going into that kind of matchup, and it played out about that way with the
I
team
really
fighting.
liked the draft from Sandbox. I thought that was really heads up, and then the like playing the vision control necessary to get those really good engages. I thought game 2 was sweet from Live Sandbox, and then you go into game 3 and you can feel it in the air. It's getting very close to Worlds time, which means Lee Sin starts to just get a little shinier. He starts to seem just a little better. Maybe I'll take him out for a drive today. And it's just like, it's literally just the owner show on Lee Sin. His early game was so strong. I believe he affected, I think he had impact in all 3 lanes when he went. That top side gank onto the Jax, I think it is, Like, he even knows he's there. He knows he's there. The ward is in the bush for him anyway, but he still gets the kill. He's able
Yep.
to take that advantage elsewhere. And really, I think it's Owner just like kind of controlling that early game. Faker's just being a turret somewhere. And but yeah, game three was fun if you're an Owner fan.
Yeah, and seeing the Lee Sin is exciting. Live Sandbox definitely had some missteps there. Willer got a little greedy going for Owner's Raptors for like with no ward coverage or knowledge of where Owner was early on, gets picked off there. And they did like bounce back a little bit. They get the Leona ult onto Faker while he's clearing the pink ward in the river brush by mid and everything, and pick him off. But as a whole, like Faker just did his thing, kind of just tried to stay, like you said, be a turret, stay alive, and put out damage from 3 screens away. But yeah, Owner, and then of course Guma on top of that. Once he had the lead, they just were so good for T1 to wrap that out and close out the series 2-1.
Yeah, I think that was quite an exciting way to end the regular season play here for our enjoyment of LCK. We're gonna have a couple of playoff matches maybe to talk about here on next week's show. But yeah, it's gonna be all playoffs here for the LCK. But that was T1 Live Sandbox, like Aaron said, 2-1 victory for T1. Faker's back.
Yep, he's back, baby, just in time. But we also had the IEM Cologne CSGO tournament that you wanted to get into a little bit, particularly semifinals and finals, I believe. So why don't you go ahead and lead into it?
Yeah, so I'll just give you kind of like the highlight. So my big surprise, like my big disappointment here was the heroic loss to Astralis, and fair enough, like watching the rest of the tournament, Astralis is just like big time, like on the rise. Like they're making moves at the previous major. At the previous major, Astralis showed up like pretty well, got knocked out, but now they have Device in the lineup as their AWP player. Old time name, big time player, is like putting up some really big performances. But the big change for Astralis specifically is their new in-game leader. I believe his name is Blame F. So like a totally new leading voice who he himself has had to kind of come into the in-game leader role. So with kind of this like rejigged lineup, Astralis comes into Cologne just on a tear. So this is just their lower bracket run. So they lose 2-1 to G2 Esports in their Group B, and then they 2-0 NIP, they 2-0 Mouse, they 2-1 Na'Vi, who arguably are kind of in like a little bit of a rework. And then they 2-0 Heroic as well. So Astralis is just like literally every call that they made, every map, every play, it was just working. It's literally like a movie where like every play they called, it just went really well until they meet up with G2 in the semifinals. The map pool for Astralis was just horrible. So G2 is, I think at this current time, to my understanding, I think G2 right now is the best Inferno team. I think just flat. I think they have the best Inferno, specifically the T sides, I believe. So the map pool for Astralis just looked pretty tough. Ancient was a little bit better, but yeah, so Astralis's run ends against G2. But where my fan eyes were, I was really hoping to see Heroic make another run, major winners from this year. but they lose 2-0 to Astralis. But like I said, they were on a tear. I mean, who really was going to beat them, right? Team Vitality in the quarterfinals beats Cloud9, but then lose 2-1 to Ents. Ents, Israeli Counter-Strike on the map. These dudes come in just playing hot. They qualify right into the semifinals based on their group stage performance, so they don't even have to worry about the quarters. So they're right in. They get to watch Vitality's match, which is, I think, in that position, like, pretty strong. So Ents 2-1 against Vitality. They earn their spot in the grand finals against G2 Esports, who on the same day, like we had talked about, beats Astralis 2-0. The Inferno map just looks wild. So that kind of sets up our final four. We get G2 Esports versus Ents in the final. And again, the map pool is looking okay, because we get Inferno out of there. Ents doesn't have to worry about it. Anubis, Ancient, and Vertigo all start to look really good for Ents in the map pool compared to G2, but it's that Nuke and Mirage that they've got to get through first, which are significantly going to be arguably like kind of G2 favored in that sense. But I believe the worst part about it, Ents loses their own map pick. So I believe Nuke, which was like they opt into first, G2 wins in a massacre. This was not even close.
Yeah, I'm looking at the score line, and that's brutal.
It was rough. Like, literally nothing Ents was trying to do on the T side or the CT side was working. They just had the whole thing locked down. So
yeah,
the first kind of half of the series does not go well for Ents. Anubis looks much better, like much better. They look like a totally different team. The way they understood that map, their A hits specifically on the T side for Ents were unstoppable. They were so fast, and it was even these like they were even in like 4v5 post plant scenarios, but their A site setup was just so strong that G2 like opted out many times. They were just like, yeah, this is just a save here. So Ents' Anubis was very strong, but then you get to Ancient, map 4 for G2. Looks fine for Ents, like based on other performances, but by this point, I mean, they're firing on all cylinders, especially Nico and Monesi. Like, Monesi is here. He has his 10 at this point. Like, he's in full AWP mode. He's got a couple of rounds, man, that are just like wild out of this kid. So G2 ends up taking it 16-9 on that final map, win the series 3-1. Everybody just pops the fuck off. What was really exciting was, no matter who won, it was going to be new people winning Cologne, like, for the first time. So that's like, it's kind of what's so special about the Final Four is, like, it's a bunch of teams that had never really done it before, which would have been quite interesting. I guess Vitality would have. But yeah, the grand final was quite an interesting little storyline there. And final note here, it was casted by my boy Sponge and Machine, so the cast was just like super fun, super good. So yeah, I would definitely go and check out that grand final. It was super fun.
Nice. I will. I'll definitely go back and check it out. But I mean, both of these teams have been performing well. Like Ents, for instance, they finished first at IEM Dallas, then second at Katowice, and then second now at Cologne. So they've been really on a heater recently, but G2 as well. Just like they have a phenomenal lineup, so the potential for them to just pop off or have these insane performances is always kind of there. So pretty cool, and yeah, definitely we'll be going back to watch those matchups for the finals there at the IEM Cologne.
Yeah, it was a good tournament, but last thing I wanna bend your ear about, just want to talk a little bit about Magic, kind of talk about what I'm buying recently, kind of what I'm brewing on. Um, we've done a good amount of work to kind of clear out, I'll call it like a backlog of cards that I don't think I'm going to be playing with in the near future, turn those into cards that I can play with in the near future. So I have a buy order out for a playset of Hallowed Fountains. Part of my goal is to get a bunch of the um, staple lands that are played in a bunch of different formats and are what ultimately are like the backbone of your Magic the Gathering decks is the mana base that you need to cast your spells. And when you're trying to play multiple colors in a deck, you need the mana base to support that. So if you're trying to play green, white, and blue cards, you need lands that are going to, on time, give you those correct colors, to be able to cast your spells, right? You don't want to
Remind
be
me,
wait. Go
uh,
ahead.
can colorless mana be used for anything, or is it only for colorless mana options?
Only for generic spells. Like you
Okay.
can't use a colorless mana to pay for a green pip on a card.
Okay, just making sure there.
Right.
I thought that was the case, but
Yeah, but you can use colored mana to pay generic costs.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But when you're in, if you want a 2-drop that's both blue and white, and you want that 2-drop on turn 2, you need your lands to give you both blue and white, or have some kind of modality in that way.
Gotcha.
So instead of thinking like I need the spells, I think I've come to the realization that I have enough spells, but if I want to play a varied amount of deck lists, the best place to start would be the mana base, right? So I started with the Steam vents for Phoenix, for Blue Red Phoenix. So
Okay.
that's my playset of the Blue Red Shocks. Now I've got my playset of the Blue White Shocks. That's going to go into, for Pioneer, it's called Blue White Spirits. So it's like
Okay.
a tempo strategy where you're using a bunch of low costed, evasive creatures to control your opponent's board and like swing in for combat damage in the air.
Okay.
But you're in blue and white for this, so I'm looking to put together the blue white mana base here. Because then not only can those Hallowed Fountains and Steam Vents be played in Pioneer, I can take them to Modern, I could take them to Legacy, I could take them to this or that other format. Whereas like just a random 7-drop from this set or whatever, like that may only be played in one deck, but these
Gotcha.
lands, they're gonna be ubiquitous. So a one-time buy is like it it it's got like more of a potential rating, you could call it.
Okay.
So my goals have kind of been like to the mana bases. I'm looking at shock lands, fetch lands, and really just thinking about less and like being a little more specific instead of looking at like shapes, worrying about details.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, very
Nice.
excited about it.
Well, that's solid too. Like, especially to find a box that has a mix of what you're looking for, that you can, instead of going out and having to buy all these individuals, you can hopefully find a lot of those, cracking some packs and all, which is part of the fun as well. So you get
Oh
to
yeah.
dive in on that, and
Scratch that itch, as they say. So
there
yeah,
you
that's
go.
just a little bit of Magic the Gathering brewing here. But yeah, let's get these people out of here. Let me hear about your flavor of the week.
Sounds good. So for my food this week, down at the shore, we did a seafood boil. We like got all the stuff from a store that sells it with the little metal container and everything. You bring it home, throw it on the stovetop, cook it all up with the corn and potatoes and all the seafood that you throw in there. So that was awesome. I haven't done that before, but enjoyed it quite a bit. So a nice,
That sounds great.
nice little seafood dinner at the beach. For my music, or not really music. On the way back from the beach, I tuned back into the Tiny Meat Gang podcast, which I had not listened to in a very, very long time.
Our boys.
Yep. So was listening to Cody and Noel a bit. I was cracking up. On my ride home, I was like, I just didn't have any sort of vibe of music that I wanted to listen to. And I'm like, you know what? I haven't listened to a podcast in like a year. I'm going to go ahead and check that out. And so it was awesome to laugh along with them after not having listened for quite some time, dive back in. And so I'm thinking I may mix that into my drive here and there a little bit more. But then for my visual medium this week, I have been, I think I mentioned it, but I've been going through some of the like DC comic, like primarily Batman type shows that are on HBO and all. But I dove in a little bit to the show Titans, which I don't know if it's like a CW show or whatever it is. Either way, very like I've enjoyed it so far. I'm only 3 or 4 episodes in, but it kind of looks more at Robin or Dick Grayson and kind of his time post being Batman's sidekick and all, at least at the start of this, but also mixing in some of the other characters, I guess, that you have seen from like Teen Titans and things like that. You have Raven, you have I think the one woman is Starfire, I'm just assuming.
Gotcha.
But
is there Beast Boy?
Beast Boy makes an appearance, but he has not been like you see him as a tiger like running amok somewhere and then just like out into the like runs out into the woods as he like transforms back into person.
Oh, that's fun.
But you don't really get like, it's more of a he's here kind of thing, but not really a part of the overarching plot yet.
Gotcha.
Or it like hasn't connected to that quite yet. So I have not seen Cyborg yet, but yeah, a lot of the Teen Titans have started making their appearances in the show, hence
That's
the name,
exciting.
of course. But it's been fun kind of checking that out a little bit, and just I love the DC comics and especially like the Batman part of the universe. So this tertiary like Robin and Nightwing or any of that stuff is still in that same like vein for me. So yeah, that's my flavor of the week.
Very cool. The Batman mythos is it's quite rich, I have to say. Gotham City is always fun to visit for sure. But yeah, so my visual medium here, the most wholesome show you've ever watched, it's called Sweet Magnolias. I may have talked to you about it before, but these are the kinds of shows that Sarah likes to put on after a hard day of work and just experience something that's, you know, got no sharp edges on it at all. It's just good family content. But Sweet Magnolias season 3 finale, this is the way to do it, people. Especially in today's day and age where, like, you don't know if your show is going to be repicked up, if you have a season 4 or not. End it with a party. Just a party. They ended it with a wedding. You get everybody into the room. You can give, you know, your nice little cameo shots. Be like, remember this person, remember that person. And you can just seal it up really nice, even if your shit doesn't get picked up. Because then at the end of it, if Sweet Magnolias never has another thing, at least in our minds, it's not this nagging question of, what the hell happened to Maddie? I need to know what happened to Maddie. Do you remember the conversation? And then, just for the rest of my life, I'll
I
be
love how into this
incomplete.
you are.
Well, I'm just
You're hooked.
I am. I'm very hooked, but I'll be okay because of how good the finale was. I'll be okay if there's not another season.
That's good.
Dana Sue ends up back with Ronnie. They renew the vows. Everybody's happy. Yeah, it's a hoot. It's a hoot of a good time. But I'm super happy for it to be over. I Those shows make my skin crawl in some way. My food here for the week, classic family favorite, cilantro lime chicken. Sarah's got it like locked in now, and I think this is how she did it last time that I talked about it. But she did it with the little like chicken breast with the bone in, so you get some of the
Okay.
like marrow fats and all the like the connective tissue and all that.
Nice.
So tasty, and her brew for it, the cilantro lime mixture that she's got going on, so tasty. Shout out to that meal. And then my music here for the week, some classic rock has got me feeling like nostalgic and thinking about like getting quote unquote getting older.
Okay.
So there's that John Cougar Mellencamp song, Jack and Diane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that who wrote that originally?
I think it is.
Okay, I hope it is. For all of our older
Yeah.
listeners, I
Yep,
apologize.
John Mellencamp.
There we go. So John Cougar Mellencamp, Jack and Diane, he has that line, and it's so haunting. He says, "Life keeps on going long after the thrill of living is gone."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I mean, he must have wrote that when he was 19 years old or whatever, right? Like, these aren't, in some way, it's so haunting to me that these young individuals can have this sense that it's like it's not all good in some way, right? Where like he's in his youth singing this, but all the while saying like, yeah, man, for some people they stop living. They stop having fun living, and there's something to that.
Yeah, or I feel like someone's just experiences kind of shape that, and like being a very observant and fortunately musically talented person, like you have to wonder like what caused it. Like, is he looking at his grandmother and going like she's not enjoying what's going on right now with like her health or this or that, and it's like long after that, long after those periods where you can really just live life, like you're still around for a lot of folks, and you're having to kind of adapt to how life is without those excitements of of just things from youth that you have the ability or whatever else to do. So
Sure. Yeah, well, and then the other angle is, Jack and Diane's a song I've heard a million times, but it's in those kind of like maybe quieter moments where you hear the lyric in just a different way, where it sounds completely different. It takes on like a whole new meaning, and
Yeah.
you're just like, damn, like this isn't how I heard that line like 15 years ago or whatever. It sounded very different.
yeah,
One probably didn't even hear that. You were paying attention to maybe other elements. But
Yeah.
now, like, you've lived a little bit of life. You've got some, yeah,
and it like clicks.
you've scraped your knee a little bit, and now it's like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
that's a very sad thing to say, but it's so true in a lot of ways. And then it reminds me to like, yeah, I don't think you're supposed to take anything for granted here, So yeah, man, that's what I've been thinking about as far as music. These like old songs that I've known are like, I'm hearing them in like weird different ways. I'm just in my car going like, damn, Mellencamp, like that's heavy, bro. I'm like,
I mean, I get it though. Like I've come across, and whether it's like funny lyrics like Childish
mm,
Gambino stuff, where
mm-hmm,
listening later on in life and from me learning more about X, Y, or Z thing, that all of a sudden like
yeah,
things click. Like it can be the same thing with something like that, and you're like at a point in life where you are like have more life experience, are like, oh, I'm like seeing what he was seeing when he like
right.
wrote this kind of thing, and it's not just that like fun lyric or thing that you kind of gloss over anymore. So
Yeah, it's like, oh, there's something here, and like no wonder it has so much staying power. No wonder like these songs mean so much to so many people. It's like, oh yeah, there is something in there. But yeah, so that's my flavor of the week here.
nice. Well, as always, ladies and gents, that does bring us to the end of this week's episode. We appreciate all you taking the time to listen with us and everything week after week. Check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and hit us up on Twitter at Tall and Short of One if you want to let us know flavor of the week. If you want to give us any things that you're interested in hearing about from F1, Magic League, anything else. But thank you all, and we really appreciate it.
Tell your friends. New episodes every Thursday. We appreciate our listeners, new and old. So just thank you so much for taking your time to listen to the pod. We appreciate you. This has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
See ya.